There is always something in the offseason that revolves around Browns cornerback Greg Newsome. This offseason, no different, but we're going to break down just exactly maybe what the issues are for Greg Newsome and his role with the Browns in 2025. We'll do that now. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate all of you who come out to the OBR for your favorite Browns coverage, whether it's the written content from our fantastic group of writers, or, of course, the OBR streaming network, beginning nightly at 6 p.m. Eastern. After this episode of Browns 3D, stick around 7 o'clock. You will have Things I Think I Know, hosted by Brad Ward. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the OBR over on Twitch. Death, taxes, and Greg Newsome's name being used by the media in the offseason. The latest with Greg Newsome, and this makes sense, and anybody who listens to me or reads the socials kind of told you that this was coming, and I've kind of been calling this for some time. And this is not necessarily Greg Newsome being difficult. This is just the reality of a player who is going to go into his remaining season under his rookie contract towards free agency, and what is best for him and for Greg, now his family as well, as Greg is now a father. Greg Newsome, as a rookie in 2021, showed extremely well at the cornerback position for the Browns. It actually at the time looked like a really good pick that Andrew Berry had made for this team. Then 2022, the Browns in the third round drafted Martin Emerson. Martin Emerson was an extremely good player, and the Browns got extremely good value with Martin Emerson. The issue being, you now had three good cornerbacks between Denzel Ward, Emerson, and of course Newsome. So it needed to be all figured out. So in 2022, Greg Newsome missed some time. Martin Emerson got a lot of playing time in Newsome's absence. And Emerson brings something of the three corners between Newsome, Ward, and himself that the other two just can't offer. And that is that Martin Emerson is just the bigger, longer corner. So when 2023 came around, the ideal plan for then new defense coordinator Jim Schwartz was to keep Emerson on the outside. You usually don't have your bigger, longer corners. They just don't translate well to the nickel position. You certainly were not going to alter anything that Denzel Ward was doing. So which meant the most reps that Greg Newsome was going to see was going to be at the slot. And in all fairness, in 2023, all the corners played well. Denzel played well. Greg Newsome played well. Martin Emerson played well. Then 2024, and it just didn't go well for Newsome and Emerson, not their best ball, understandably so. And now you're here in this difficult situation for the Cleveland Browns where they have two of their top three corners going into contract years, he and Emerson. Greg Newsome is not full. Greg Newsome has agents. They know the deal. Slot corners in the NFL don't cash in free agency. It's simple. It's a position that is well regarded. It is a position that every team feels they truly need a quality guy there. But the oddest thing about it is that nobody actually wants to pay any legitimate cornerback money to a slot corner. Now, Newsome, to his credit, and he's not wrong, he can do both. And I think that is where maybe Newsome's frustrations are right now, because I think he feels that he is just labeled as the nickel. So in times in past, he was playing outside, then kicking in when Martin Emerson was coming on the field. 2024, Newsome was essentially only going on in the field when the Browns were going to their nickel package, to their dime package. So again, Newsome has a gripe. And going into free agency, and I believe one of the quotes he said and is on record as saying is, I would need to have some answers to some things before I was ready to commit basically to a contract extension with the Cleveland Browns. And I'm not sure we're there yet as far as extension talks for Newsome and or Emerson from the Browns. The Browns don't have a lot of cornerback depth outside of Emerson and Newsome. Cam Mitchell, who was drafted in 2023, and that was, of course, after Newsome and then after Emerson. Cam Mitchell's gotten the opportunity to play, but it was never that he beat anybody out. It was kind of that, he was pressed into duty, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. They did bring in an interesting name, and this is one that I'm going to really kind of have my eyes on as training camp unfolds. And I do believe at one point he had an interception return for touchdown in minicamp, and that is Nick Needham. Nick Needham was part of that ragtag bunch of Miami Dolphins in the early 2020s where they just had nobody. Nobody. So basically, there were a whole bunch of guys on the field just trying to make a name for themselves. One of those guys was Nick Needham. The other one was star now with the Minnesota Vikings, Andrew Van Ginkel. So these guys who were no names at the time and just got an entire season of playing time, and then plus were some guys that really found their way in this league. Nick Needham could play nickel. And I have a feeling that Nick Needham is probably going to end up playing more in 2025 than people think he's going to play. Some of it could certainly be due to injury and him finding his way out of the field due to that. Some of it could just obviously be that maybe Needham is just good and he shouldn't have to sit out because of what a general depth chart says. Now, as far as contract extensions for Emerson and Newsome, I think the Browns are in a, it's certainly a difficult situation when you have two players at the same position coming up at the end of the rookie contracts at the same time. Because we'll hear the talks of, so-and-so's camp and it's getting close, or so-and-so's camp, it's not getting close, which could certainly cause, some friction. There could also be the case where the Browns have maybe not any interest in re-signing either one of them. So for Greg Newsome and the resume and the potential payout as a starting outside corner for Greg Newsome is certainly a lot more bountiful than a nickel corner. That's going to be difficult for Greg Newsome because to this point and after this season, he's probably going to have more looks on the inside and reps on the inside than maybe he had reps on the outside. So the question would be is, are the Browns going to make the starting base corner opposite Denzel Ward a legit competition this summer? Is it going to be a legit battle between Newsome and Emerson? And then maybe Newsome will kick inside when the situation dictates. For Greg to, get viewed as an outside corner, this would have to be the ideal scenario. So then maybe he's, not necessarily a 50-50 split between outside and inside, maybe more of a 60-40, 65-35 split, outside being the top number, inside being the lower number, of course. And then maybe, that gets Greg the opportunity to, look to get a little bit more of a bountiful extension. Otherwise, Greg could be in a odd situation where maybe he's signing a free agent deal for good money for the opportunity to show himself either with the Browns or with another team within the NFL and maybe have those contract talks then lead up to getting a new deal after he has proven himself full time on the outside. The Browns cornerback room, what they need for this group to be successful, because I think the pass rush will improve in 2025. 2023, the pass rush was great. 2024, it was okay. 2025, with improved pass rush, it plays right into the coverage scheme of Jim Schwartz. Basically, where he, has his corners doing an underneath, trail man to man with safety help over the top. Of course, finding that free safety has always been difficult to this point, right? So I get everything from Greg Newsome's standpoint. And I also think that for Greg Newsome, I think some of it was, well, hey, I was the first round pick. So this could be a situation where Greg Newsome's versatility might be working against him a little bit. And again, I understand the frustration. Players want their money. I get it wholeheartedly. But that is definitely something that is going to, be something to monitor throughout training camp, certainly throughout preseason games, is the usage of the Browns cornerbacks and certainly how the Browns cornerbacks are playing. Because you have Martin Emerson and you have Greg Newsome basically playing for money, legitimately playing for money. And again, I don't think the odds are great, slim to none, in my opinion, that both would return to Cleveland. And I would say the chances are better that neither return to Cleveland than both return to Cleveland. From the Steve Palazzo's podcast with Sam Monson, they actually, one of the few who actually went to air and did a segment kind of putting the Browns in a better position than most want to put them into. And for us here at the OBR, if you listen to any of us or you read any of the work from any of us here, these are things that we've been trying to say loudly for quite a while now. The way the Browns handled things this offseason. Let's be honest, the beginning of the new league year and the trading for Pickett, the Joe Tryon, Shoyanka signings, none of those things certainly had anybody salivating over the aspects of what the Cleveland Browns could do in 2025. And I think the more you look at it, it is probably a 2-year plan right now for the Cleveland Browns, which I am sure many fans probably have some level of frustration with, rightfully so. And Sam Monson in this segment basically put himself on record saying, the Browns were in such a bad situation with the Watson contract hanging around them like a noose, and they needed something good to happen to them and break for them in regards to the quarterback position. As we all know, the Browns ended up with the number 2 pick. They certainly showed us they did not feel strongly enough in drafting Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall. They did not feel comfortable with the landscape of their quarterback room the way it was. It was hard enough to feed Jerry Jeudy without a consistent quarterback. How were you going to feed Jerry Jeudy and Travis Hunter without a consistent quarterback? Got on the phones, worked the phones, knew Hunter was a player who had an affinity to be playing in Jacksonville, the area where he was from. Andrew Berry was able to make the deal work, not only secure a second-round pick in 2025 that turned into Quinshon Judkins, also able to turn it into another first-round pick in 2026. Went about their business and added Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger and Judkins, like I mentioned, and Fannin and Dylan Sampson and Dylan Gabriel. And, of course, at 144, finally, Shedeur Sanders. So now the Browns, for the first time in a long time, have a promising rookie class. This is what happens, of course. The ramifications of the Deshaun Watson trade and Steve Palazzo, just like I've been saying, if you want to label the Deshaun Watson trade as the worst single move in NFL history, I don't know who's going to argue against you. I've heard some people come back, well, the Herschel Walker trade year, Herschel Walker was a running back, man. Herschel Walker wasn't given $230-something million. So, yeah, was a bad trade. It was a terrible trade. Cowboys built a dynasty off that trade. However, not even close to the disaster of the move that Deshaun Watson trade was for the Cleveland Browns. So now you have this promising rookie class. And I don't think there's much that's going to stop any of these guys from getting playing time. Of course, maybe the quarterbacks, we'll see how all that works out. But Graham should right in to a base defensive tackle starting position. Carson Schlesinger, due to JOK being out for the year, should slide right into immediate playing time at the linebacker position. I'd say that Judkins and Dylan Sampson are probably going to end up statistically outproducing Jerome Ford in the running back room here this season. Their Browns have tried to find the right complement at the tight end position to David Njoku for a couple of years now. And I think Fannin is going to be just that. And certainly an offensive weapon that can line up again on the outside as a wide receiver, can line up as a big slot, can line up as an H-back. There'll be looks where he's in the backfield as a fullback. All of these things that you can be able to do and be creative with Fannin. Which now gets you, of course, to the quarterbacks. And both high on Shedeur Sanders and both giving off the speak of don't sleep on Dylan Gabriel. Now, I know there's this talk, and obviously there's got to be some merit to it, of what Coach Stefanski felt about Dylan Gabriel and his capabilities coming out of Oregon. I'm not ready to hand over a job to either of these guys. We still essentially have 2 months to figure all that out and what exactly their place in the pecking order of the 2025 Cleveland Browns quarterback room is going to be. And again, I think for so many of us and our thoughts on how the 2025 Browns should be handled certainly have to come down to what you believe the logistic aspirations of the 2025 Cleveland Browns can be. However, my counter to that is, if it's not leading you to the playoffs, if it's not leading you to a win in the playoffs, if not more, then what is the point of Flacco or Kenny Pickett? It's a legitimate concern, because if that's the case and these two play the majority of the reps, or one of them plays the majority of the reps, and Gabriel and Sanders are just lookers on, then you're telling everybody you've already committed one of the 2026 first-round picks to a quarterback, which is probably fine, which is fine. But it certainly puts you in this awkward position where you spend a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick in 2025 on Dylan Gabriel and, of course, on Shedeur Sanders. I have no problem running Joe Flacco out there and seeing if we can recreate the 2023 magic. It's not a guarantee by any means whatsoever. But if that's the route you want to go, I see the vision. Play better defense like you did in 2023. Joe still got the arm strength. To be honest, you might be able to run the ball better here in 2025 than you did in 2023. You didn't have Nick Chubb in 2023. It was all Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. And Kareem Hunt was getting important yards, but certainly was not performing or producing at a high rate. The yards per carry was gross. So you would think, now that you're going to get back to the same scheme you were using in 2023, with improved talent in certainly both Judkins and, of course, Dylan Sampson, I see the vision. I see the path where you say we want to run Joe out there. And who knows? Maybe the Browns get out the box in September and hit the ground running. And that first 6-game stretch that everybody talks about and deems to be so difficult, the Browns roll through that with a winning record. And now all of a sudden, the 2025 season, the Browns become a team where, hey, maybe we can make the top 7 in the AFC East. I'm sorry, in the AFC. But if you don't, you're back to figuring out whether or not you believe Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, neither or both, are legit options for Cleveland in that quarterback room going further. I'll continue to say it. If you're telling me I'm getting one of two and I'm, who I'm planting my flag on, I'm going to plant my flag on Shedeur Sanders. It's not a disrespect to Dylan Gabriel. It's not. I just kind of think that Shedeur Sanders, and taking away Travis Hunter out of this equation, of course, was maybe kind of doing a little more with less. Everybody wants to talk about those other Colorado wide receivers, and most of them made their way into NFL rosters, and they will make it into NFL training camps. But it was Shedeur Sanders who got them there. That's just fact. He's got the NFL traits, the bloodline, and other than the fact he gets a little heavy with his foot behind the steering wheel of a car. Everything we've gotten to learn of Shedeur Sanders since he's become a Cleveland Brown is basically nothing like the guy we were told the Cleveland Browns were selecting. So it's key. And that's where, for me, and you can't have it, obviously, in the gray area where I'm trying to speak about it. You know what I'm saying? Because we're generally just speaking of unknown. So sure, would I love the Browns to go to the playoffs in 2025? 100%. No question. It gives us great shows to do. It gives the guys here at the OBR great content to produce day in and day out. But it also could put us back into the false reality that 2020 was, the false reality that 2023 was, and that it's just not a consistent product. And, not comparing anybody to Mahomes or to Josh Allen or to Lamar Jackson. But that should be what you're striving to be as an NFL franchise. Consistent, year in, year out. Even if the regular season wasn't great, somehow we're there as one of the top 7 teams consistently in the playoffs representing the AFC. I can't imagine how this is going to work daily for the Browns once training camp begins. Because, coaches obviously are open and honest, but every one of them is going to watch all these practices and then go back afterwards and watch the corresponding film. And it's not going to be a stunner if, the offensive coordinator says, well, that's my guy. If Kevin Stefanski says, well, that's my guy, quarterback coaches say, oh, well, that's my guy. The rest of the offensive guys divvy up and say, well, I think that guy looks best. I think he's doing what's best. I think he works best with what I'm trying to do as far as the offensive line coach and what play actions work off the success, hopefully, of my running game. It's going to be a lot of long discussion, long meetings for the Cleveland Browns on the offensive side of the ball, beginning July 22nd, rolling through for a month later into August. It's going to be a lot. Because, and of course, to make things murkier, we all know how this is going to go, right? It could be a Tuesday practice where Joe Flacco looks fantastic. Could be a Wednesday practice where Dylan Gabriel was the best looking guy out there. Thursday, it could be Pickett. Friday, it could be Shedeur. And then you run it all over again and you go right back through the order. because that's the way things work when we're talking about the Cleveland Browns, of course, right? A lot of it is also going to come down to, how the offense overall is performing around them. Who throws the most catchable ball? Who's getting the best out of Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, and certainly, hopefully, Deontay Johnson, who the Deontay Johnson thing, and whatever. Did he say don't put me? I mean, I got to be honest. A 28-year-old receiver, 29, whatever Deontay Johnson is, if they hadn't been put into the game, and then you were trying to put him into the game, 2 or 3 minutes left in the third quarter, after he had not taken a snap the entire day. I mean, doesn't that sound like if you're Deontay Johnson, obviously you have no intention of playing me today? So the way that scenario worked out, I don't necessarily know. And now everybody, oh, well, the cold. Yeah, I got news for you. It didn't sound like it was the cold. It sounded like Deontay Johnson said, y'all don't want me. So if I wasn't good enough to play in the first 38 or 39 minutes or 43 or 44 minutes of this game, what in the world are you throwing me in for now? Is it the right attitude? Absolutely not. No. But sometimes, you kind of have to look at things from every perspective, and I can certainly understand Johnson's frustrations. But of course, Johnson's frustrations are fine. But you also have to keep in mind the frustrations that Deontay Johnson caused for the Steelers, Texans, Carolina Panthers, Baltimore, right? Is that how many teams it was in like a 15-month span? Crazy, right? But the thing I think, and this is where maybe my hopes are, I don't want to say high, but my hopes are that Deontay Johnson can maybe be a part of this here in 2025, is when guys go through situations that Johnson has gone through. And again, most of it probably brought on himself. There's a common denominator here in all these teams, and Deontay Johnson, of course. You want to see humility. You want to see a guy speak on it and basically put his name on it. And I think for the most part, I think Deontay Johnson has done just that. Basically, basically his actions, his attitude, his candor almost got him out of this league. It's not the first guy from the Last Chance Saloon that Andrew Berry and the Browns have, tried to get in here and try to get something out of, and spoke very eloquently and thankful to the Browns organization, basically stating that they were the only one called. The only one that kept kicking the tires, staying in touch with a guy, trying to lure him in. And where Deontay Johnson has been successful within his time in the NFL, it certainly would scratch an itch that the Browns need, and something that they've kind of had their issues with, trying to find that slot guy who can be a consistent performer. Most of that is their own fault because they were putting guys there who weren't necessarily slot guys and hoping they were. Sorry, Elijah Moore. But the Browns haven't really had that consistent type of slot guy since Jarvis Landry. Deontay Johnson can play in there, and Deontay Johnson can play well in there and do some really good things. A lot of what ifs for this team as far as whether or not they can be successful in 2025. But again, for me, unless you can guarantee me that this is a playoff team with Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett behind center, I'm telling you, play the hits and let's see what we got. Greg Newsome, this is where we opened with, obviously Greg Newsome, I think a lot of this is looking forward to the future. Luckily for Greg Newsome, he's going to make $13 million this year with the Cleveland Browns. But Greg Newsome's frustration as being viewed as just a nickel cornerback are simple. I'm about to head to free agency, and my resume is going to read nickel corners. And nickel corners do not get paid. So I understand where Greg Newsome is coming from wholeheartedly. I think the thing is that neither one of them played all that great last year. And if the Cleveland Browns want to do right by Martin Emerson Jr. and certainly by Greg Newsome, they need to make the outside spot opposite of Denzel Ward a true open competition this summer. And if Greg wins, and he gets to play on the outside. And then in obvious nickel and dime situations, he kicks inside and Emerson takes the field. That's fine. But that starting outside opposite spot of Denzel Ward should be fair game in 2025 training camp for the Cleveland Browns. As always, we appreciate all of you who come on out to the OBR Daily to get your favorite Cleveland Browns content. Our fantastic group of writers are out there pumping it out day in, day out, and we appreciate you all coming to read along. We appreciate everybody who comes out nightly for the OBR streaming network beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern. Browns 3D. Stick around, 7 o'clock. You will have Things I Think I Know with Brad Ward. Make sure you subscribed to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to the OBR over on Twitch. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. And we will talk to y'all tomorrow.